All right, quick little sound test. Let's check it out. Yes, sir. We are live. What's up, y'all? All right, so a lot of you guys reached out to me to check this out. I figured why not? Let's definitely look at it, see what's up. A lot of you have given me a lot of feedback on this too. Some of you are saying that the newer cooler is okay. Some are saying that it's better. I've seen people say it's superior. I had others say that it's kind of a mix. It's half and half. Like it gets the job done, right? But it is still questionable. So I figured why not look at this with our own eyes and we come with our own conclusion of what exactly is happening with this new unit, all right? So we're going to see what's up. Shout out to Eagles fan, Chief, what's going on? Jerry, Damien, John, and what's up, Dave and Sean, what up? He says, no one would care if that PS5 had liquid nitrogen coolant. They care more about what games they'll get. Yeah? Let's see. All right, so we're ready to roll. We're definitely ready to roll. Let's see what's up. Is it superior, the new model, or are we still having some issues? We shall see. And turn this up and play.
It's time today to test the thermal differences between the two different PlayStation 5 heatsinks that are currently on the market. We have so much data, we're not going to be able to fit it all in one video, but this will contain the bulk of the thermal data that's related to the heatsink change. And it looks like Sony is going to be rolling with this change going forward as well, so it'll be useful to have. We worked with Digital Foundry on this piece. Digital Foundry helped us with securing the new cooler version of the PlayStation 5. And when talking with Rich from Digital Foundry, he dubbed our testing platform we built the Franken console. And we like that name. So this is part of what we're going to be testing today. This here is an amalgamation of at least 3 different PlayStation 5s, but we have stock out of box testing as well without modification. We just wanted to build something to really narrow down all the variables we could and get a true academic exercise approach to thermal testing for the PlayStation. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. We needed Digital Foundry's help for a key aspect though, which is making sure that the gaming performance remains the same between the two versions of the console that are shipping, just in case there's a difference. That way we know there's all variables controlled or at least understood. Before that, this video is brought to you by Crucial and its Crucial X6 portable SSD. We use these external SSDs all over the office for rapidly transferring games and files between systems.
What's up?
The X6 comes in 500 gigabytes, 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, and 4 terabyte capacities with USB-A or USB Type. Click the link in the description below. So as we ramp into this, first of all, we posted a video recently about thermal cameras and the places they're used.
Yeah, shout out to you. I seen you nailing those platinums.
Useful places they're not useful. You can check that out if you want to learn more about methodology for this type of thing.
Do I think we'll see a PS5 Pro? No. If we do get one, it's going to be probably 2026 if they want to prolong the gen. I don't see it in 2023 or 4.
We'll be using thermocouples for pretty much all of this. We have a lot of them wired up. We've improved our thermocouple wiring precision and the approach that we use to testing. So that's all good news. We've had a lot of improvements over the last year since we did the last console thermal testing for the PlayStation 5. And we also have the improvements we made when we tested the Xbox in February of this year, which we'll link below if you're curious. There are multiple approaches to testing. Some of them are easier to do than others, but certainly there are many ways to evaluate a product like this. This doesn't have internal sensors. There's no software we have access to that allows us to read the die temperature of anything. Yeah. And so that means physical wiring is about the easiest way to do it, and it's not easy to do. This means that multiple people can approach the console with a different plan, different test strategy, and everything down to a millimeter of distance change and where a thermocouple is mounted on one unit versus the next will impact the numbers that come out of the end. The point of saying all this is that you cannot compare thermal data from one outlet's testing to another's.
Yeah.
They might both be right, but they will be right within their own methodology, and you can't really cross-compare them. Just wanted to say that because if the thermocouple is not in exactly the same place, we're not reading from software. There's no T-die There's
No, I
no
like it. Ice cream
hardware
looks good.
info 64. So with physical wiring, you have
Yeah, I agree.
technician
Slim will
error
be out
at a
before
millimeter
Pro.
level or less, and that's going to matter. An important forward before we get further. We just looked at some of the coverage now that we've completed this video. We're going backwards in time to film this insert. And we looked at Igor and Eris's testing that they've done. We greatly respect both of them. We've worked with Eris recently on some of the power supply stuff, and I think their testing approach is good as well. But we came to different numbers and slightly different conclusions. Our own conclusion's the same, which is we both say it's not really worth pursuing one console versus the other for the heatsink change. But our numbers were different, and this is fine. Just wanted to create this insert here because I think a lot of times with computer hardware especially, where it's much easier to control, there's kind of a decided on thing for how to approach testing. We see that people want sort of one set of data to be right and the other one to be wrong.
What up, Cryptos?
And they sort of pick whomever they trust more and say this one's the right one. But to be very clear, I trust Igor and Eris's data set, and I trust my own data set, even though we came to different numbers. Why is that? Well, it's for a lot of reasons. We explain many of them in here, but this particular thing is extremely difficult to test, and both of us, I can speak for both Eris and myself for this, so I was talking with him earlier, both of us want a higher sample size and a more refined process for testing the PlayStation 5. It's very difficult. You really can't overplay that. And so because of the level of disassembly and reassembly required to do this, a higher sample size would make probably both of us feel a whole lot more comfortable in firmly stating one cooler is one way versus the other. But when you're within a couple degrees of each other, within say even 5 degrees, one test to the next, it's hard to declare a firm victor when it's not like a computer where you have an internal die sense. It's much easier to work with.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So that's it for the forward before we really get into it. Their work looks good as well, and if you enjoy this type of stuff, I would encourage checking it out. It's pretty neat, and Eris has a really cool lab over there as well. And personally, that's part of the fun of applying a scientific process to a consumer product. You get to do really fun stuff because it's a consumer product, but collaborate and work together to collect more data, do things a slightly different way, and get a fuller picture. So that's part of the fun. So here's the quick recap of the story. Sony started shipping an alternative version of the PlayStation 5 with a different cooler. Whether or not that cooler is better or worse is what we will be exploring today. That's the goal of this content. But it started shipping with a different cooler and a couple of other changes in there as well that we'll go over. These models are differentiated by 10x and 11x. So it's that second digit, that 0 or that 1, that makes it easy to determine which version this is, at least as far as we can tell from the models we've seen in the wild and the one that we have here. It seems as if the 11x model, as in 11 some other digits, is the one that has the new heatsink design, whereas 10 is the older model. 10, from what we can tell, has been manufactured at least up until about this point. Maybe they've stopped recently and they're switching over soon. But either way, it's likely that Sony will migrate over to the new heatsink design fully at some point in the future. The differences in the big heatsink for the SoC are pretty obvious just by looking at them, so we'll loop back to that one. There are also several smaller changes that we discovered along the way. First of all, the VRM heatsink has changed in a noticeable way. Well, maybe not that noticeable. It's actually kind of hard to film, but there's a difference. There's a slight dip in the height in the center of the VRM heatsink, the one at the condenser end of the heat pipe, and a bit of a raised platform at the outer edges. Very difficult to calculate which one of these has more surface area. They're basically the same, but it's a small change, and it looks like the newer one might be a little bit on the slightly less material side of things, which would coincide with some down costing elsewhere. The MOSFETs are synced directly into a copper plate that connects to the heat pipe. So that's the evaporator. And as the liquid undergoes its phase change and moves to the condenser end, it'll now be met with a larger heat sink to improve cooling efficiency. The VRM's capacitors sync to the aluminum plate and not the heat pipe directly, so this is mostly beneficial for the MOSFETs. Secondly, the base plate itself has changed. The aluminum base plate mounting holes are identical, so that's good, and the contact is basically the same between the various PCB options, although there are some small differences, and any small differences in SMD contact can be accommodated easily for testing purposes, but if you're not really planning to deal with it, you shouldn't be swapping plates between PCBs. The big difference is in the memory module contact patch. The older plate has dimples or divots where the memory modules are located, and they're small. They're just about 6 millimeters at the smallest and 7 millimeters at the largest for those dimples that come down and contact the memory. For perspective, each memory chip, that's including the black packaging around it, is about 12 by 14 millimeters. So there's central contact here with at least the top side of where the flip chip BGA die is, but just like with an IHS, full contact is beneficial and preferred. It will help. That's presumably why Sony has changed things with the base plate in the new 11X cooler. It now has a flat base plate rather than the dimples, with more full contact between the memory and the plate. The thermal pad spread indicates approximately 12 millimeters across at the widest for the new contact patch, and maybe 8 millimeters at the narrower section. So it's not the full 12 by 14 coverage, but it's far better than a 6 millimeter diameter circle from previously. The chassis is also different. The chassis mold for the new one has its heatsink guides in different places, so it'll fit differently. There's potential for this to maybe influence airflow minimally, maybe adding some flow guidance, but we think it's mostly to just better fit the heat sinks. As for the fact that there are different fans, this isn't a change with the 11X overhaul, but in fact has been in place for, well, since Sony started shipping the PlayStation 5. For nearing a year now at this point, getting close to it anyway, there have been at least 3 different types of fans on the market, and that remains true now. The Nidec fan's blades sweep back past the hub area by about 12 millimeters, whereas our original sweeps back 9 millimeters. More notably, the Nidec fan blades sweep all the way to the hub on the rear side, while the NFB unit from our 2020 PS5 is flat on that side. This console can already take air in from both sides. It has ventilation on both sides. The fan's got a hole straight through the chassis, so getting that extra exposure on the other side, opposite from where the core of the blades are, will help with moving some more air down into the base plate area and not just the SoC heatsink. That's also why not controlling for the same fan can cause testing problems if comparing the heatsink. The PCB is the same size and has the same exact mounting holes. The SoC and the memory modules have not changed and are in the same places. There are some small resistors and capacitors surrounding the memory modules on the older unit that aren't present on our new one, but these don't meaningfully affect thermals, and they certainly don't affect the base plate. Some capacitors have moved around on the board as well, and you can actually still see the punch marks on the base plate for a section that is no longer punched out because its underlying capacitors have moved. We were able to accommodate any PCB or SMD changes in our testing approach with some care and extra attention or effort were needed. And finally, the heatsink itself for the SoC is clearly different. That's what triggered all of this. This will mostly affect the SoC as that's what's directly mounted to it. The heatsink will indirectly help everywhere else, but the SoC is the only component that's immediately connected in a big way. The heat sinks are difficult to compare without just doing the testing, but the key differences boil down to these things. The new cooler has a longer straight shot of aluminum fins at the same pitch as previously, but with its heat pipes extending through more of the fin stack. This is potentially beneficial. However, the potential reduction in overall surface area would be a downside. We'd have to do a lot of measurements and math. It'd be easier to just 3D scan it if we had a 3D scanner in order to really calculate the surface area differences. So it's easier for us to just test it. And that's what's important anyway, to see what's the real world impact. There are other factors that can come into play too, like flow guidance, the resistance imposed by the heatsink or its fins on the fan as it's trying to move air through the heatsink could create an obstruction to airflow or impedance. So those are factors that matter as well beyond just the surface area of the heatsink that could still affect the number you get at the end of it. Enough of that, let's get on to the testing setup. So we're gonna start with the most basic thermal testing we did, and then we'll expand on the methodology as we get through this piece. Here's our initial list of devices and tests we ran. First, we ran the Digital Foundry PlayStation 5 that has the new cooler on it. That's the 11X model. We wired 6 thermocouples to that, and we ran 1 for ambient. That's 4 on memory, there's 1 on a VRM MOSFET, and then we've got 1 for the SoC plus ambient. Next, we retested the old GN PlayStation 5 from 2020. We validated that the results remained about the same. We then wired and tested a digital PS5 with the old style cooler and a new PS5 with the old style cooler as well. The thermocouple probes are placed right against the case for each component tested, except for the SoC, which is via the backside of the board. And we place them at the same spot against each memory module as best we can, with the caveat that there's always going to be some amount of technician error because humans are imprecise, even if you try to measure it out as accurately as possible. We calibrated the SoC thermocouples against the over temperature warning that pops up when you disconnect the fan and it reaches a high temperature. So that helps us determine a delta from thermocouple to thermocouple on the 2 different devices that would be derived from technician variance rather than device variance. All of that data was collected prior to disassembly down past the cooler. So liquid metal was undisturbed for all of these. Then it got more complicated, and we did this set of tests that's on the screen. This list took about 16 hours of benchmarking per day for maybe 3 days, especially because we were doing multiple test passes for averaging purposes and to make sure there weren't any outliers. Many of these will end up as a separate video, but we can use most of them for this one. Ultimately, we had to implement even more controls to be satisfied with the data, but we'll talk about that after the first set of charts that's more stock. On to the first chart. All 4 tested memory modules were within a maximum range of 4 degrees Celsius of each other. The far right module in our top orientation had the most variance, with an 82 degrees Celsius measurement on the new cooler and 86 on the old one. This is across the 2 different PCBs, mind you, so it's 2 physically different consoles at this point. We haven't merged them yet. They're about as stock and out of box as they can be. Thermocouple positioning precision remains a variable until we merge the PCBs and heat sinks, so this is close to what we'd call reasonable variance for these components, given that variable. We're not seeing decision-changing differences between any of these results yet, but the 4-degree gap on MEM4 top begins to exit error and is what we would call a measurable difference. Now, even with variance, we do see one strong trend. All 4 modules measured consistently saw benefit on the newer 2021 cooler in the 11X series. We'll talk about the reasons why a little bit later. VRM MOSFET thermals were uninteresting for now, but they'll become a key point of interest in the next test, so keep an eye out. As for SoC thermals, those are starred here, and that's because the back of the socket measurement is the most difficult to consistently nail. We won't have confidence in this number until we look at a few more charts, but we're getting there. For now, the unmodified cooler results suggest potentially higher SoC thermals for the new cooler, which is a breakaway from what we saw with memory. The SoC is also difficult to confidently measure a difference between 2 devices because of the liquid metal. So normally, we don't really care much about unit-to-unit variance for something like how a cooler mounts, because 1, if it's bad, it doesn't matter if it's on one device, if it came retail, that's still a problem. And it's probably on more, by the way. There's not that much variance from cooler to cooler. When you're talking about mounting a GPU cooler to a GPU with thermal paste, they're pretty consistent. But liquid metal, doing it by machine en masse at a factory, that's still a pretty new concept. And Sony is applying it really heavily here. So there could be some variance there unit to unit. We're not sure. It's not really been researched enough because this is still kind of new to do en masse in consumer products. Now, of course, the other reason that there could be differences is because the cooler is different, which is what we're actually trying to determine today, but we'll have to sort of drill down further in the variables and eliminate more of them to get a firm answer on that. Technician variance, of course, is another option where the SoC mounting for the probe might not be precise, and that's why we're going to combine PCBs in a moment. And at the end of this chart, the sort of takeaway right now is that we're starting to see a trend emerge for which cooler is potentially a little bit better technically, but we need to do some more testing. And that is where the Franken console and complicated testing enters the fray. And what we needed to do was combine bits and pieces from multiple PlayStation 5s to create the ultimate testing platform, basically treat it like you would any other test, where you have a fixed platform with hopefully just one thing changing so that you can test the quality of that one thing without any questions surrounding anything else. And just to be clear, you shouldn't be buying multiple PlayStations to mix and match the parts. That only makes sense for testing. So to have true like-for-like results, we needed to eliminate 2 key variables. One is potential technician or thermocouple variance. Thermocouples can be calibrated, but technician error could easily account for a few degrees here and there if the thermocouple isn't cleanly contacting the memory module. The second variable is much harder. We wanted the exact same SoC and memory modules, and that means we would need the same PCB. We ended up taking the Digital Foundry motherboard and the old 10X cooler design and base plate from one of the new PS5s we bought recently, and we fitted these together without issue. So the mounting holes are identical, the component placement is identical for all of the core components that we're measuring, and the components we're measuring are identical, and the couple of small SMDs that moved are able to be accommodated with some technician care when assembling all of this. The measured components are the same and still make good contact, sometimes potentially better because of the base plate changes, which is part of what we're testing, so that is valid to be better or worse on one. Unfortunately, though, this is where we learned that the chassis is not the same. Internally, you can see differences in molding for the 2 shells so that they each conform slightly differently to their respective heat sinks. This change could contribute to performance results, but certainly it contributes to being able to actually reassemble it. So we needed to also transplant the shell from a GN10X unit, the old one, with the DF11X PCB, the new one, and a GN10X cooler. The fan used for testing all of this also has to be the same. That's really important. The new DF11X and GN10X old cooler units both use a Nidec fan, but they run at different speeds. That's fine, that's normal, it's due to manufacturing variants. So we chose just the DF Nidec fan for this test. Now that we've eliminated most of the other remaining variables, we saw some more interesting and sometimes mixed results. The measured MOSFET gets attention first. We measured a 5.6 degree advantage in the MOSFET thermals with the newer cooler design. The SoC still plotted a few degrees warmer though on the newer cooler, and that's now with the exact same thermocouple on the same SoC backside and the same PCB. So the only remaining difference here is the cooler and our mandatory reapplication of Sony's own liquid metal when we rebuilt with the 2020 model. The 2021 11 series was applied by Sony, obviously, because that's how it was tested stock. It's possible that we did a better job than the machine did for applying liquid metal. Liquid metal has to be extremely thin, and Sony doesn't necessarily do it that way. Sony's application is fairly heavy. It pools. This is good for mass production as long as they can contain it, and Sony does contain it extremely well, but it's not how a human user should do it. So this variable is one that we really can't eliminate and we can't reasonably control without having Sony's factory here. So it's important that people understand that science isn't magic and that there are limitations to what we're able to do. This happens to be the primary one. Regardless, we're still seeing a trend emerge. The older cooler seems to be doing better for the SoC by a few degrees on average, and we're confident in that number after a few retests and after we did the stock testing without ever disassembling the cooler from the SoC, so it was stock factory liquid metal for those. However, we'd like to stress that we really want a lot higher sample size to have full confidence in this stuff. It's really easy, again, to have variants of this kind of testing because of all the assembly and disassembly required. So until we are able to, if we ever do, test the same thing on maybe, say, 10 consoles, it's hard to say with absolute certainty which one is better unless we were seeing differences of, say, 20 degrees. But these differences, they're all close enough that we're really just not completely comfortable with how near it is to the normal margin for error plus all of the variables in this thing. So thus far, maybe some of these are some real differences, but none of them really matter to the end user. They're not big enough gaps. The memory thermals in all of these scenarios are pretty close to the original memory thermals we saw in our 2020 testing. They're not directly comparable in testing methodology, but they're remarkably close anyway. There is, however, a little bit of a difference where some of the original data runs a tad higher. We wanted to look into that. Ultimately,
sorry, I want to put that in 4K.
The answer for why it was a little bit higher was found in the fan. And that's because our original console used an NMB fan, whereas all of the new units we've purchased or gotten from Digital Foundry have Nidec fans. And they're different in their spec. Now, the Nidec fans vary unit to unit within the normal plus or minus 10% range of RPM, but they're the same design, the same build, and so they work the same way other than the RPM number. Whereas the NMB fan is completely different in its design, and so will behave differently. This is potentially, and as you'll see, is the driving factor for a difference there. In the past, we've also seen speculation about Sony perhaps forgetting to add or not adding by choice one thermal pad on the flip side of the PCB under the cooler for the original unit. Unfortunately, we want to leave our original unit cooler still attached to the device without ever removing it, which we haven't done for this testing, and we won't because we want to do longevity testing with the liquid metal much later.
Yeah,
but
that's the thing.
That means that we can't see if that one thermal pad that was speculated maybe 8 months ago now is there or not. The best way we could check if it's there would be with an X-ray. Maybe we'll do that. But for now, that's the only thing we can't really get a firm answer on because it would invalidate other testing we're trying to line up for in the future. So we plugged the DF Nidec fan into the new Franken console, and we let it run. Here's how the result stack changes. The orange line is what we care about here, and it's using the same heatsink as the red line, except a different fan. Everything here is identical. We've built for testing, except for that fan. The older fan with this new PCB and old cooler results in memory thermals that
older
are
fan
very
that's in the
close
base
to our
model
original
runs
results
cooler?
from 2020, except with different wiring. So
runs
that's
faster, I mean?
extremely reassuring to see because those results are with different thermocouple wiring almost a year later. That's pretty good. The original testing was in territory of being what we would call concerning for the thermals on the memory. They weren't technically at the maximum rated temperature for the modules, but they were close enough to be worrying in certain environments or in poorly maintained conditions and things like media cabinets. The fact that these numbers are so close on a totally different PCB and with new thermocouple wiring runs is a testament to the process we put in place, and we're proud of that. The memory now approaches 90 degrees Celsius on the memory modules with this fan change. One note for this one, we removed the memory one bottom data because we didn't have 100% confidence in that data point, and so we need to do some further validation and testing to see what it comes out to be, but rather than just push data that we're not fully confident in, we decided to remove that point from this chart. The MOSFET and the SOC thermals move as well, also influenced by the fan change, but that memory temperature is what we were interested in. Now, before looking at the fan differences to understand this, we need to look at one other aspect of testing methodology. We did power logging for all of the testing, so we know we were at the same power level. But what we'd like to know is if the gaming performance is the same between the two devices so that we can make sure it's all controlled for. And for that, over to you, Richard.
So how do you run benchmarks on a games console? And well, in this case, is there actually any point comparing a revised PlayStation 5 to the launch model? Well, on the first point, it's all about capturing the video feed from the HDMI port and at the basic level comparing one frame to the next to figure out average frame rates. Benchmarking in a way that's equivalent to what we do on PC though, that can be challenging owing to the prevalence of 30 FPS and 60 FPS caps in console land. But there are ways and means to get the job done. To illustrate one way we can overcome a 30 FPS limit in one title, here's Remedy's control in graphics mode with ray tracing enabled. A 30 FPS limit is in place on PlayStation 5 during gameplay, but if we engage photo mode, that cap is removed, and you'll get some idea of the overhead available as the GPU is now running flat out, producing as many frames as possible. And yeah, using fast travel, we can fashion a mini benchmark of sorts across multiple scenes. Another example here, Godfall's intro runs at 4K resolution with no 30 FPS cap in its quality mode, so we can test that too. But note here how this particular part of the sequence varies from run to run. An advantage of using video capture for benchmarking is that you can see how specific areas in sequences may adjust dynamically from run to run. Bottom line, with this and with titles like Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition and Resident Evil Village, consistent performance drops beneath a 60 FPS limit can be tested, and where there are run-to-run variances, well, we know what to expect. And yes, despite the new cooler design and a boost clock concept that's unique to PlayStation 5, the revised model does run pretty much exactly like an older one. Boost isn't the same as on PC where thermals can impact performance. Frequencies on CPU and GPU adjust according to power requirements of specific workloads measured on one SoC. That behavior maps to all retail units so that all consoles run identically. Small per scene variances can influence results a touch, so in Control's photo mode here, sometimes there is a small variance. A 1.6% differential on average in this specific case. But otherwise, the new PS5 works exactly like the old one, where we've tried to match scenes as closely as possible using fast travel for a nigh-on exact match. Godfall presents almost identically except for the scene heavy in particle effects, but we know that's not an issue thanks to the multi-run testing we ran previously. Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition's prologue running in native 4K with ray tracing also presents without run-to-run variances, so we see that once again the new PS5 runs identically to the old PS5. But can a toasty console impact system performance? Does the boost clock reduce when the console is running hotter? Well, after placing the new PS5 in a confined media cabinet with very limited airflow, running the Control photo mode with a 200 watt plus fixed power draw for 2 hours and then benchmarking, well, Godfall still acts in exactly the same way as it did before. Resident Evil Village does have some dynamic aspects in its presentation which change on a per run basis, but here, the hot PS5 run is actually a touch faster than the cooler run. Scene content is defining the change in performance here, not any variation between PS5's old and new. Ultimately though, comparing old PS5 versus new PS5, operationally, it's the same machine. And with that, It's back to Steve.
Thanks, Richard. Digital Foundry is going to explore the performance testing in an in-depth piece on their own channel.
Issues in terms
so
of
we've got a
games.
link below. Open it up in a new tab and check out their video as well.
What
to get
about
the full
longevity?
picture. Now
That's
we get
the
into the
only
fan
real thing to
testing
look at this
individually.
point, then.
For this, we started with heating up the console and checking manually
That's
the
gonna take
fan
time.
speed using a tachometer externally every 10 degrees or so. So we went from about 50 degrees Celsius on the SoC and also on the hottest memory module just in case, and we stepped all the way up to about 80 degrees Celsius. And using this process, we were able to determine Sony doesn't do anything super intelligent with the fan. It doesn't change based on the temperature or anything like that. So we got the same numbers all the way up as long as we were under the same load, which in this scenario was...
Pause that. Did y'all hear what he said? Let me roll back. I told y'all that fan was not no crazy different. I don't know why people are hyping up the fan like that was gonna make a huge difference, or like Sony engineered it. Sony didn't do anything different with the fan, guys. It's the same model, just a different heatsink. Longevity was the big issue though that we were talking about for this unit. As far as games performance, they're identical to the base model. So if you're worried about that type of stuff, they pretty much confirmed that there's not going to be no difference. Maybe a 1.6% difference you might see in something. But keep in mind, you would have to literally be close, super close to your screen and probably like, you know what I mean? Like really zoom in and look at it type of thing for each frame by frame to notice that.
Sony doesn't do anything super intelligent with the fan. It doesn't change based on the temperature or anything like that. So we got the same numbers all the way up as long as we were under the same load, which in this scenario was Astro's Playroom in the cooling testing environment, which is about 200 to 215 watts, depending on the PlayStation setup that you're testing. What we found mattered was when we reduced the power consumption instead. So it wasn't the temperature of any particular device that changed the speed, but rather at 200 watts, we saw the fans ran at about 17 to 18% PWM, and then they would instantly step down on closing the game for a different idle state speed. With the game in the background, however, they maintained their original speed. We presently have no reason to believe Sony is choosing fans based on the cooler or the unit. Maybe they are, but we don't know how we would show one versus the other without a huge sample size. We have, however, seen at least online reports of 3 different fans matched to the same heatsink design from the original launch. So it seems random, perhaps based on supply availability of the fan. The fans all run at a very low pulse compared to their maximum capabilities. Sony has room to scale if it wants, but the fan doesn't behave intelligently in any way. It basically just runs at 1 PWM strength if the system is under 100% load, like a game, and then it steps down in RPM if it's idle in the menu, at least based on what we've tested so far. So our range was 815 to 940 RPM for anything over 100 watts. That includes up to max.
That's refreshing to hear that. I will say this though, what Impatient said in the chat, if you got a PS5, make sure you clean that regularly. I'm not even joking. That's why the side panels are so easy to come off. It's recommended to clean that thing, regularly, whenever you get a chance. Not every single week or something like that, but at least once a month. Maintenancing is going to be something you're going to want to do for PS5 down the road. I'm just keeping a buck with you.
Maximum power consumption. Closing the game dropped to 52 watts, and fan speed to a range of 440 to 615 RPM, depending on the fan tested. RPM, as a reminder, is not everything. The fans have different noise and pressure and flow profiles as well, but the 2 Nidec fans are identical in these characteristics because they're the same, so the figures are directly comparable, and the difference is the run-to-run variance in the pulse behavior and the RPM. They're within normal tolerances here, so there's really nothing wrong by Sony. RPM changing, of course, does affect the thermals, so we still would have to pick one fan, and that's what we did. The NMB fan is on the worst end of the scale and explains why some of the results from our original unit were a couple degrees warmer than what we're seeing now, but they're not that far off. We next looked at the PWM to RPM response when setting PWM manually instead of using the PlayStation. This can be done 2 ways, and we've used both in the past. You can back probe the wires with an oscilloscope to get the PWM numbers via an oscilloscope, or you can use a custom cable and plug it into the fan and then that into a fan controller. These would be similar to the custom cables we had built in Taiwan last year. The PlayStation 5 fan unfortunately lacks a tachometer wire and is just a 3-pin cable, so these are the easiest 2 methods to work with. Auto seems to be about, again, 17 to 18% signal on all 3 fans at 200 watts load. The Digital Foundry and new GN consoles are 1.9 amp 12 volt fans, while the older GN console is 2.4 amps 12 volts maximally. Now it's not pulling that much current because it's not running at 100% speed, but that's the difference. And the blade design is totally different too. There are also delta fans. We haven't tested
Variable
those here,
frequency,
though.
so it's
The
not running
RPM
at
range, at
100%
least for
speed.
these, deviates primarily at the high end and the low end. In the middle, they're fairly close together. But Sony never seems to exit the range of 18% PWM anyway, at least not right now. The reason why is because Sony is focused on noise first. It's not a bad thing necessarily, but a little extra noise at, say, 19% or 20% PWM may be worth the reduction in thermals. We'll talk about that in another video coming up, so make sure you're subscribed. So that's it then. Here's what we're confident in. We are confident that the VRM thermals, based on our testing, are improved. The MOSFET we measured is improved in basically every test we ran. We haven't given you all the test data. We might run additional pieces if there's interest after this, but there's just too much to run in one video while also going through the differences and explanation. But we saw VRM thermal improvements with the MOSFET measured pretty much everywhere. Some places it was more or less error, but as you get into the more controlled testing, like with the Franken console, it starts to create a more solid difference between itself and the rest of the thermals, and we were seeing upwards of 5 to 5.6 degrees Celsius improvement at sort of the high end for that. For memory modules, we were pretty much always within a couple of degrees. 4 degrees Celsius was about the highest range on average that we saw on any particular module, with most of them being closer to 2 or so degrees Celsius, maybe 3. So this is a point where 4, you're kind of exiting error, and it is becoming a real, a measurable difference. 3, same thing. 1 or 2 degrees, it's kind of tough to call for a lot of this stuff because there's a little bit of imprecision involved when you're doing this. But 3, 4 degrees, we can call that probably a real difference, probably an actual one, but not one that you'll ever realize. And the part that matters is, what does it really mean? And memory, it's going to cap out at 95C or 105C or 110 degrees Celsius, depending on if the manufacturer, so that would be Sony here, has gotten a letter of exception from its memory supplier. They do this occasionally, like with NVIDIA, for example, where something that has a base spec of 95 degrees Celsius, they might write a letter of exception and say, you're good up to 110 on this, we think it's safe and fine. Now, that's manufacturers talking to each other B2B. It doesn't mean we think that running at the maximum rated temperature is safe and fine. It's really not good because
it's not good for
you're starting
longevity.
to threaten longevity of things.
Yeah.
And the biggest problem with it is you don't know what kind of horrible scenarios a consumer will put a product through, whereas it gets clogged with dust, with pet hair, sits on a floor for years, or sits in a media cabinet where it's completely closed off. Now you're increasing the effective ambient temperature of the box, and if it's in a media cabinet especially, and that will push you from technically within spec to outside of
higher.
spec.
Yeah.
And that's where we
Yeah.
get concerned about it. So
What
we
I said
always want to see a
before,
number
too.
below the rated maximum. So we would classify the hottest aspect of memory as concerning, meaning it's not critical, it's not an immediate point of failure,
Should be
but
fine.
it's warm enough that if you don't take care of the console, maintain it, keep it clean, keep it out of a tight cabinet, constrained space, if you don't do those things, it could become a problem. And that's why we would recommend just keep your console clean, maintain it. It's kind of expensive, so it's worth doing anyway. SoC thermals from our testing at least look a little bit better on the older heatsink, which could make sense. We can make an argument either way, but there's an important variable there, which is with the Franken console, where there's a reapplication of liquid metal involved. It's possible we did a better job with the reapplication than Sony did out of the factory. It's not to insult Sony. It's extremely hard to do liquid metal in any application, especially machine. But a machine is going to be a little sloppier
that's
with
funny.
it. They might have extra liquid metal in
cloud
there
too.
to
I've
deal
seen
with
those
things
fall
like
off.
dry out over
Plus,
time, and
don't
there's a lot of
care,
liquid
plus
metal in there.
L, plus
So it's
bit
possible
drop
we've influenced that result with our reapplication.
SVA.
That doesn't mean the test method is bad.
I
It means
wanna
we're
take you
being
for that
realistic
account.
with everyone by telling you
should
the
fit you.
limitations of our test resolution. There's only so far that we can drill down before we can't really control it anymore within reason. So the SoC differences we're a little wishy-washy on, but maybe they are advantaged by the older cooler rather than the newer one.
Yeah.
The newer one, we see generally the memory running marginally cooler at best. We see the VRM MOSFET running cooler, and we overall haven't seen any major downsides to either heatsink. It seems to be the fans make a decent difference, but not enough of one where you should pursue purchasing a specific fan. And we also wouldn't really recommend pursuing a specific console. So the 1100 versus the 10 series, they're not, in our testing, that different. There are a lot of ways to test these things. Maybe there's a scenario we haven't found yet, but we're not seeing a huge difference, at least not one that should make you go crazy on eBay trying to find a specific unit, and don't overpay for one either, at least if you can avoid it. So that's gonna be it for this one for now. This has been very complicated. It took about a week to do all this testing.
Okay, so memory runs cooler on the new model. However, SoC, which is the system on the chip, runs cooler on the older heatsink model. So in terms of longevity, the older heatsink model is fine, no issues. However, the other one has benefits in other areas as well. You guys saw the temps. So overall, pretty neck and neck, pretty straightforward. I don't really see that big of an issue for both. So yeah, and it looks like it's pretty good for both. Definitely pretty good for both. Let me turn my lights on. Hold on a second. Let me adjust my lighting. I got darkener hella quick. 1 second. So my concerns were definitely let there be light. So my concerns were definitely validated with this video by itself. Again, no issues from what we're looking at here. Especially longevity obviously was the big thing to look out for both ones. The base model looks fine with just a bigger heatsink, you know, better temps on the SoC versus the newer one, which is more, you know, they cut back on a bit. But that is kind of the question, though, how far the newer one's going to go. But aside from what we've seen here, especially comparisons, I'm definitely not going to say it runs worse. I don't know what Austin was thinking with the title of that video. He shouldn't have said worse. It doesn't run that worse. It's actually pretty neck and neck. Let me remove this guy. Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye. But yeah, it doesn't run super worse or nothing like that. Game performance was pretty much identical. They even heated up the system when they did it. So again, no issues in those regards. So no problems when we looked at. Let's see. So look forward to more testing from these guys. Yeah, that was pretty thorough. I'm glad that they teamed up with Digital Foundry for this as well. Digital Foundry did a nice test, and it was cool to see them collaborate to get a better testing on this. In terms of exhaust fans and all that stuff, obviously, as you guys just saw by this, it's not the right way to go about it, but again, it definitely got us more answers in the long run when we got a proper testing of this. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's definitely the case. When you say something's bad and when you say something's terrible, 9 times out of 10, I want you to understand this, everybody in the chat. If I was to say PS5 sucks right now in this stream, 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna have more people want to come through and probably want to check this video out and see what exactly am I going off about. You see what I'm saying? When you say someone's worse, it wasn't that bad. From what we saw by the testing, it's not that bad. There is, though, again, especially going back to my video when I made on it, especially my concerns, the only thing I was really worried about is the SoC. Is the newer one, you know, cooler for the SoC? Because, you know, if your CPU continues to get hot and you're going, you know, if it's getting to that extreme state, like what you said as well, when you're not cleaning the system, you know, you're not doing proper maintenance and all that stuff, you're going to go to that point where longevity definitely comes into question. So that's the type of stuff that you got to look out for as well. But I didn't really see much else, though, from it. It was pretty good, nonetheless. So is it worth skipping the newer model? I don't want to say it's worth skipping the new model. At this point, I would say it's safe to get the new model at this point. They did improve in other aspects despite cutting back on the heatsink. It definitely is cooler in other areas. So they definitely fixed a lot of the issues in that, even with the redesign of the pathway for, you know, the heat dissipation and everything. They did a better job in that one too. So it's definitely going to be better down the road. Am I surprised to see it? Was all fake concern all along. Hey, man. You know how it is. But nah, you know what's funny, though, about the whole fake concern? I saw a lot of funny parts about this whole thing. Dudes are really hyping up the fan, just the fan in question, as if Sony did something miraculously different with the fan. They didn't do anything miraculously different with that fan. I told you guys. A fan's not going to do that much. If it's not, you know what I mean? It comes down to the heatsink. If that's not, you know, proper, you ain't getting that much out of the system. The fan does its job. It pushes the you know, the hot air out, absolutely. But it's not, that's not the be all of it, no. Hey, man, that's the type of stuff you got to look out for. You see it all the time. And the funny thing is, the whole clickbait aspect of stuff like this that blows out of proportion, it goes deeper. It's even beyond what you guys saw with the whole heat dissipation, you know, all that stuff with this. You can apply that to anything else. You can apply that to strictly games in general. You can apply that to the consoles in terms of, you know what I mean? Like features. Like they'll say unbelievable feature and it's game changer. And you click on it, right? And it's not even that big of a game changer. It's really not. This is why I'm very selective with my titles when I say stuff. I don't really put all that stuff in there because it's like, yeah, sure, sure, get more eyes on it. But it's not worth doing that, especially when I know damn well it's not that big of a deal. Now, Sony was offering a feature with, you know, which was going to allow you guys to bet on your favorite fighters, stuff like that for Evo. You guys remember that feature we went over? That's pretty cool, right? I talked about that, and that was a pretty, you know, type of game-changing feature. But not every feature is a game changer. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. You got to look out for, you know, certain headlines that are just, you know, tell you, to get you hyped up. Exactly. Megaton. That's another one. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all seen the headlines. Y'all see it everywhere. What's up, Iman? I wouldn't say it's more efficient than ever. It definitely does better in terms of the, for the memory. Memory is cooler, and it definitely is cooler in the other parts. But come on, Cryptops. You already know it comes down to the CPU, aka the SoC. That's where the main concern everybody had for it. Because, you know, when the SoC is bad, you know what I mean? Longevity, you pretty much already threw that out the window down the road. But this unit, again, I'm guessing this unit really is going to come down to all you guys who are watching this. So those of you that might not have a PS5, those of you that have one and might have to replace it down the road, you know, from the OG unit. The newer unit, from what we just saw in this testing, we really got to maintenance that one. So I'm just throwing it out there. And I saw somebody saying they had problems taking off the side panels. I don't know how you guys remove your side panels. All you got to do is pull one side up slightly and slide it down. It comes right off. There are hooks that go into the little notches. That's why when you slide it back on, it locks into the hooks, and it's secured. So to take the side plates off, you literally just pull off one side. You pull one side up, and you slide down, and it's like that. That's how you do it. I don't know why people are having trouble with that. I've seen some people nick their systems, though. They be yanking it so hard. You don't have to yank it. Yeah, if you want to become a channel member, you get access to those emotes and everything in the chat. Shout out to my channel members. You want to become a channel member, it's literally $1. And everything that nature. It's $1 a month. Appreciate everybody who's a channel member. What's up, Carl? It says PlayStation Nation. Yeah, they definitely walked away from this one a little bit more better than I thought they were with this model. I'm just glad my concerns were definitely answered in this video. Again, longevity, that's going to come down to the user at this point when it comes to the system. But so we'll see how that runs out for everybody. But no issues. It runs good. I got no complaints at that point. I'm glad it's better. I'm glad the results came in that we needed. It took longer, though. Definitely the only thing. Go ahead, send it, Paradox. Go ahead. I'll ask you guys any question. What you guys think about the whole thing? I'll prolong it for a little bit. What you guys think about the whole situation? You buying the new model? You guys still feel confident in the new model? Do you want the older model? What you guys think? Let's hear it. I saw it good. Saw it good, Sean. Reddit says, sounds like Austin made a bad video. Yeah, the thing about Austin, he did so many things wrong, right? If I was to go back and really look at the video, first of all, the title of first of all, he went for clicks with the title. You know what I mean? The title says it runs worse. It's worse. So when you put worse, everybody goes, what you mean by worse? And then they start questioning him. So he messed up with the title alone of that video. You see what I'm saying? he got a lot. He went about it all for clicks, man. Which y'all go with the OG PS5 for a while. Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm OG PS5 for me, but the new one is fine. No issues with the new one. I think all this was unnecessary. Well, everybody had questions. I had a lot of people hit me up about this because I'm barely uploading as much, even though I tried to upload for you guys. You know, when I find something worthwhile to talk about, like I was like, do I want to talk about the new Sony CEO or not CEO, but new Sony executive who just joined from Capcom? But I was like, nah, I don't want to talk about it right now. It wasn't much. It's not much to go off of. So I was like, not much happening. Then all of a sudden, everybody sent me like, Ryan, this video happened. I'm like, really? So let's watch the video and see what's up. But yeah, that's about it. What's up, Terry? What's going on, bro? What's going on? Shout out to Terry. Getting the OG? Are you getting the new one? Hey, definitely don't overpay for those scalpers for the older ones. From what we saw, the older model is fine, just as good as this one. So you don't have to overpay for the older model. Yeah, think about, I get what Awesome's trying to do. I really do. But it's like when you say something runs worse and you're talking about temps, you have to do extensive testing. You can't really just go off of the, exhaust of the system at all. Now, he did do the same thing he did with the Series X, where he put it in I forgot what he did with it, but he put in a little special little machine or whatever to heat it up. I forgot what he did. And he was seeing just how much the system can handle. So he pretty much did the same thing, or he might be doing the same thing with PS5. But knowing him after this situation, he's probably going to avoid anything PS5 related for a while, which would be smart. Very, very smart. It's still a valid purchase, most definitely. Yeah, don't pay scalpers. Literally from the back of the consoles, you have to test into. Yes, well, torn between PS4, PS5, PC. Life is Strange, True Colors. Please help. So, I mean, honestly, I would get the PS5 version. Just get the digital deluxe. You get not only the game, right? You get Life is Strange Remaster as well as Before the Storm. They remastered both of those. All those games are included with the digital deluxe, which is $70. So for $70, you get 3 games. If you want to get that PS4 version, again, I don't think you're getting that. I'm not sure if they re-released it on PS4, but I'm pretty sure it's the same concept if you bought it on PS4. Because I don't think they're giving you a free upgrade path if you buy it on PS4 anyway. So you're pretty much in the same boat. It's not like you buy one set, you know what I mean? Do you get a whole new set for a free upgrade? No. You have to pay more likely for the other one. Oh, yeah, that's what I said. Yo, Asian, I don't know where you been, bro. I've been saying that for the longest, man. They proved in this one test video, the smaller heatsink is not that efficient in terms of cooling, but it's okay. It gets the job done. But the older one with the bigger heatsink that we were all praising Sony for, especially with the liquid metal cooling and all that stuff that I broke down, that's fine. That's actually more ideal in terms for the SoC versus the newer one. The newer one, however, is improved in terms of the, how they cooled the memory, right? Yeah, they cooled the memory and a few other aspects, especially how they, redesigned the shell. That's about it, though. It's not really that big of a difference from what we saw. Not that big of a difference. But again, longevity's sake, that comes down to you personally and how you take care of the system and all that jazz, too. But the fact that Gamer Nexus even said that in this video just automatically solidified my point, bro. Longevity is something that you really got to look at for this newer model. But I don't think we're going to have that big of an issue, but it's going to come down. That's going to depend on the user, though. But with that being said, I definitely agree with him when he says clean your systems every month. Definitely clean your systems, people. Don't be discouraged. It literally slides down. There's those hooks are, just look at the hooks of the system and just slide it down. You pull one side up lightly and you slide down and it comes off. A lot of people are saying they can't remove the side panels. It's very easy. I moved mine off multiple times. In fact, I changed mine to clear. If y'all saw my video for my PS5, I have a custom PS5 because we're sponsored by Gaming Cobra. Gaming Cobra gave me custom LEDs for my PS5. If you guys want to check them out, I made a video for it and everything. Yeah, if you haven't seen my video for it, but I have, all that stuff. Plus clear side plates. So mine, mine just pimped out. The side plates, all that stuff is easy to remove. What's up, Nathaniel? Pixel Slapper says PC. It's up to you. From an Xbox fan, keep up the good work. I appreciate that, RRD. I appreciate you. Thank you. I have the older model, PlayStation 5 in 2020 on day one. Same here. I don't regret my older model. How long do you think the PS4 will stay in production? PS4 is going to get supported until 2023. This is why God of War. This is why Horizon and a few other titles are going to be on PS4. It's going to be cross-gen until 2023. 2023. There's a reason why I geeked out from Spider-Man. Y'all notice, if y'all look at Spider-Man and y'all compare that CGI trailer for what we saw with the one with Miles Morales, that CG trailer looks next level, even with the Venom reveal. You know what I'm saying? That right there is, I can't wait to see that. Plus, we have a big surprise down the road as well. We got a mature rated Wolverine game, which is probably going to drop in 2024, 2025. So really, the consoles at that point are really going to get pushed in 2023, from that point, from PS5. They're not pushing PS5 crazy out the box. Right now, they're doing what's called parity between PS4 and PS5. At least somewhat, right? I'm not saying all the way, but somewhat. You're kind of going to see a parity type of thing they're going for with this, with both those consoles. They're not really trying to push PS5 all the way, even though the PS5 is going to have its exclusive games. Like, for example, Knights of the Old Republic, that's exclusive to PS5. Console exclusive to PS5 for about 2 years. So that's probably going to look a lot even better, obviously. But I'm not really expecting PS5 to be really like wowing us in terms of like insane stuff, visuals, until PS4 is officially dropped. It just makes sense for them to do that at that point in time. I really do see that. It's pointless. Specifically, if you put an M.2, people are thinking about that. Yeah, I mentioned that in my video. The M.2 drives are even an additional source of heat by itself, even with the heat sinks. That newer model, again, y'all make sure y'all clean the newer model if you're getting the newer model. That's all we took from this video. But again, it was cool that I'm glad I actually went and watched this. Because if I didn't watch this, I probably would have been like, you know what? Was Austin Evans on to something? Was I on to something? And again, I was definitely on to something of mine. He talked about longevity a lot in this video, which is, again, the question. But it was good to watch. It was really refreshing to watch this. Really good to see. No, you don't even need a tutorial video to clean your PS5. But again, yeah, I mean, some people do. Some people do. The more higher end you guys want these consoles, the more PC-like they're going to become, and the more ways they're going to have for you guys to access them in terms of like, removing panels to get to the components, cleaning all that stuff. That's just how it's going to go with these next gen consoles, guys. That's just how it's going to go. But, yeah, I don't see much else to really say. I'm actually far up in my chat. Hold on, let me scroll down. Anyone playing Deathloop looks pretty cool. I saw my friend Anubis play it. It's all right. He's playing the PC version, though, mind you. He's definitely he's playing the PC version. Can't wait to see Knights of the Old Republic and Wolverine. Yeah, Wolverine's got my attention. Knights of the Old Republic is going to be really, really good, too, to see. I wonder if they changing everything. Are they going to do their own particular style in this? Or is it going to be like the original? We'll see. We'll definitely see. If it's exactly like the original, just prettied up, I mean, you can't go wrong with that either. Knights of the Old Republic, it's really, really good. That's definitely going to be a good teaser for us until we get into Jedi Fallen Order 2, which I cannot wait to see for the next-gen consoles. That's going to be another treat for us. Final Fantasy 9 Remake, really? They're just going to skip 8? Hey, man. Yeah, I know how it is. That's Square Enix, man. Square Enix knows what's going to sell. They know what people want, even though everybody else wants everything else. You guys have fun with that. I don't mess with PlayStation consoles at all. You're smart. Don't take your system apart. Definitely. He said, what do you think about GT7? Looks photorealistic. It does look photorealistic. I heard something about ray tracing. It doesn't have ray tracing. It's very similar to Forza. So they have the same thing going on. It's like in photo mode or something like that for that game. From what we saw in the reveal, like the final reveal for it in the actual show, it looked really, really good. I'm not a racing sim guy, so I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say either of them look amazing. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit here and go like, oh, one's this, is approving this, that, and the third, because I'm not a fan, or I'm not really insane over racing sims, or hell, even Forza. I play Forza as well, or Forza's more, it's got its own little thing, but I'm not crazy over racers. The only racer I really cared about back in the day was, if we go back a little bit, the last racer I really cared about was MotorStorm. I thought MotorStorm was sick for its time. He said KOTOR's gonna be woke. I doubt it. Star Wars is branched out. I wouldn't say his work. Rockstar Games is definitely milking GTA 5. I've been told y'all this. Y'all act surprised. What? You act surprised. That bin was established. I told you nothing new was going to be added to that game. There's nothing they can add to GTA 5 that you guys have already not, or something that you guys have not already seen. You guys have seen, you guys have experienced, you guys have played everything in GTA 5. It's okay to be a fan of GTA 5. I welcome that to anybody in my chat. If you like GTA 5, go buy it. You know what I mean? Don't let me persuade you not to buy it if you like it. But I'm going to be honest with you, as a fan, and going back to the original. Remember, this started off on PS3. Then it came to PS4. Now we're buying it again in PS5. And they're talking about the Ultimate Edition, which basically is the exact same thing you got. And they're talking about new options for heist missions. As if anybody cares about that. And then they showed off GTA Online as if GTA Online was going to be this massive thing. Like, come on, man. Like, stop it. It's not worth it. Is a Ryzen 7 5800X RTX 3070 a good PC? Absolutely. It's not bad. I'm rocking the 8700K right here with a 3070. So, yeah, that's definitely a good build. Go for it. I am looking to change my CPU though, and eventually the GPU. But my 3070, from what you guys have been seeing, and from what I've been seeing when I've rewatched my shows. By the way, let me ask you guys about this too. Should I have timestamps on all my shows, whether it be the RGT and as well as my videos? I've been getting a mixed reaction. I want to know if people actually care about that stuff. I just want to ask you guys in the chat. So should I have that? Make sure I answer that. But in terms of production, how it looks, I haven't even been pushing 1440p videos because I just want to push quicker content. But that 3070 is a beast. It handles everything, no problems. I would love to see Midnight Club make a return. Yeah, it would be dope. The character models still look like PS3. They do. There's not much you can do besides up the res. And there's not that big of difference in terms of up the res because GTA looks more cartoonish than realistic. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't look crazy realistic. It looks more cartoonish. So, I don't get it. Would Bit say that less material is a downgrade? From what we saw, it definitely gets the job done from what we're seeing, right? It's cooler in some aspects. But when it comes to just the vital part, which is the heatsink, less material, and a less substantial heatsink in this case for longevity in terms of the SoC, that's definitely a downgrade in that area. But everything else is pretty much fine or identical, which shouldn't really be that big of a concern. Even with the memory solution, that should be fine from what we saw in the video. But in terms of the SoC, which is system on the chip, that right there is definitely something to be questionable of, especially in terms of longevity, which they're going to do that stuff when we eventually get there, but we'll see. Again, that comes down to you, though. Taking the side panels off results in PS5 running cooler. Amongst other things, yeah, sure, you can take the panels off, but you risk the chance of something else getting on it, getting inside of it. You know what I mean? Higher dust buildup. So the panels do their job in terms of keeping dust out. You know what I mean? But you don't want it to like that. I would recommend that. Yeah, Tekken 8's been in the rumors for a while now. Whether or not it's going to drop, we shall see. Do you think that Forspoken is really coming out spring next year, or do you think it's going to take God of War place for the fall? Nah, I think that's going to launch on time. A lot of games are pushing to 2022, though, because obviously I'm guessing they want I don't know, they don't want that much competition for each particular game, so it makes sense. I think Horizon's February, right? Wasn't Horizon February? Or, yeah, Horizon's February. Dying Light 2 got pushed a couple months. So, yeah, they're fine. I don't expect no more delays in 2022. We should be fine. Kazuya and Smash is OP, like super OP. Where's my 10-hit combo? Doing 40%. See, I don't even play Smash, man. It's cool that he's in there, though. That's cool that he made the game. But again, I want Nintendo to actually step up in other areas with that franchise. The game's already good, but I'm saying more. What I'm trying to say. But let me see here. I think that's about it. I think I covered everything. No issues. Just out of curiosity, before I end the stream, you guys want me to do retro streams? Like me playing games like this, obviously, but I'm playing some older games. I don't know why. I don't know if you ever heard this game, but it was called Beyblade Tournament, Super Tournament. I was playing that shit a couple days ago on the PC. I haven't played that in so long since the GameCube. I was like, you know what? I had so much fun playing it. It brought back those memories. I really want to go back and play some old games, but also I still got to tackle my backlog. So, do you think Sony is really going to have an event in December, or do you think it's bull? They re-trademarked PlayStation Experience, so it could definitely happen. So we shall see. We definitely shall see. I don't think it's bull, though. It's a possibility, especially with the Wipeout reports, because they have Studio Liverpool. So, yeah, that's that stuff we'll see. I have Dead Space. I wouldn't mind playing Dead Space and hype for Dead Space remake. Hell yeah, I got all that. All right, cool. It's settled then. We'll definitely go back play some games. I want to do more stuff with the chat. You know what I mean? I don't do much else as well, especially when we don't have gaming news. I'm like, that's a whole day I'm just letting go by. I should be gaming with you guys. So I wouldn't mind doing it for sure. Yeah, I got the first one. I didn't get Dead Space 2. I got to cop Dead Space 2. Just do your streams, whether it's retro games or not. Okay. 1440p, 120 of us would have been perfect for PS5. Yeah, I said that for last gen. Last gen, I said 1440p 60 would have been good. 'Cause remember how the Xbox One or Xbox, or what was it? Xbox? Yeah, Xbox One X. Xbox One X should have went for 1440p 60 at least, right? But, a lot of people was like, oh, 60's not the way. That's a PC term. Now look at them. They're talking about 60 like they're PC elitists. I'm like, been preaching that for the longest time. Once you go 60, you don't want to go back to 30. And that's kind of been the issue. That's kind of been the thing here. So with PS5, that's why I've been saying, like, performance ray tracing is going to be the mode to look out for. Especially with DLSS taking effect with the Fidelity FX. You're going to see a lot of cool stuff with PS5, man. A lot of cool stuff down the road. We're just at the tip of the iceberg. Again, a lot of people jump the gun. I see people talking about PS5 Pros. PS5 Pros are not going to happen anytime soon, guys. I don't see it happening. They don't need it. Because why would they drop a PS5 Pro in 2023, 2024 when we haven't even pushed PS5? See what I'm saying? Doesn't really make sense logically. So that's what I'm saying. If anything, you'll get a PS5 Slim before you get a Pro model. That makes logical sense. Hey, I wouldn't mind playing some Cypher Filter either. Would you call it Bring It On? Sorry, would you call it Bring It On back Ryan's Retros? I'll work on the name. I'll work on it for sure. All right, Mollusco. You said it was fun. All right, cool. Good to see everybody on board. I've been wanting to do it, but I was like, yeah, I don't want to force something. You know what I mean? I don't want to just stream like, hey, guys, I'm streaming this. Nah. Want to be something everybody wants to be a part of, have fun, you know, at least. Late night gaming? I mean, hell, I wouldn't mind playing late night gaming either. Shit, I don't give a damn. Like, you know, Jack can pick a game we play, low key. Like Aliens Fire Team. Like Aliens Fire Team. I haven't even beaten Aliens Fire Team all the way yet. I just haven't. I still haven't gotten a chance to beat it all the way. Really, I've been in the funk. Shout out to Daddy Cool for subscribing. Welcome to the channel, man. But I haven't had time for it. No, that's a fact, man. 60 is the way. Let's see. I'm playing Dead Space 2 again on PS3. It's dope. DualShock 4 is a skip. Hey, man. Respect to the DualShock 4. Hold up. Where the hell is that controller? Respect to the OG here. This thing was amazing for its time. Respect to that. We can't do that. We can't do that. But I will say, what was I about to say? I will say once you go to the DualShock 5, though, you don't want to go back to any other gamepad. It's been that kind of weird type of deal. Play most PC games 120. Oh, don't we all? Don't we all? We play all our games 120. If there is a PS5 Pro, my fingers are crossed that it will have variable refresh rate. Good point. Yeah, some of the TVs have that. I don't think they ever confirmed for PS5 again either. It doesn't have it. Or I think people are just making a big deal about the thermal and fan thing, kind of like Spider-Man puddle. Shit. That's a good point. That's a good point. My brother Medina in the chat. What up, brother? What's up? But all right, cool. I appreciate everybody's feedback. I will definitely start doing that with you all. Appreciate everybody who came through. RGT, I'm probably not going to do tomorrow, so you guys should just enjoy your Friday. The reason why I'm not going to do it tomorrow, not much really happened this week, and it's kind of pointless for me to do a show when there's not really anything that happened this week. So what we'll probably do tomorrow, we'll probably substitute RGT for this week for like some retro streams. So I don't know, we'll do something, but I don't really think there's really a need for RGT this week. Not much gaming related happened, so we'll be back next week for sure. All right. But yeah, that's it. Ryan's Retros. So y'all enjoy y'all weekend. I'll see y'all. Well, tomorrow I'll see y'all too. But you know, if I don't see you tomorrow, enjoy your weekend. See y'all next week, next Friday. Turns for RGT. We'll be back next Friday, and we'll do everything at that point. All right. Till then, it's your boy Ryan. Appreciate y'all coming through as always. I'm out of here.